Sifra Ditzniuta now on page Kuflamet Gimel. So we had some water run under the bridge. So let's read the top on page Kuflamet Gimel, and we'll read the words of Rebbe Shimon. He says, "Golufik the golufim." It's like a carving of a carving, or an impression, a stamp of a stamp, something like that. Then he says on page Kuflamet Hey, to go over there, he says, "Bechezu the chibia orich." It has the appearance of a long snake. So then he says, "Umispashet the kan," and it spreads on both sides. Zonda beresha, like a circle. It sounds like its tail is by its head. Resha, he says, has a question here. Ochid akaspin. So the head is attached to the shoulders. Is galia kultra bekitrui. So I guess kultra means its bindings. He says it revealed it's also so it could be Ismalia. It's another possibility. Kultra bekitrui, tied by its bindings. Spira sanpira ba'advoi. So what sanpira means? Okay, it's like a fin. I'm not sure exactly what it means. He says this is the secret of the kesher hayichud. Okay, anybody go on? Isba reishe b'mayim the mayam rabba. Its head is broken. He's b'mayin the Yama Rabba, from the water of the Great Sea. Dechsev shabarta roshe teninim al hamayim, that I broke the heads of the snakes on the sea. Okay, I think that is the whole piece. It's obviously very poetic, or not within reach to just simply understand everything it said. Let's look now at the the blurb at the beginning of the intro. He says, so we talked about what happens in the seventh millennium. We learned about the significance of the lack of the change in time. The time changes and the moving of Malchus to Bina. Now this is something else about Tohu, Shuku, Inyan, his Pashtus, Adinim, so Nachash, Batanim, the Kedusha. So now he has these words, Nachash and Tanim. I don't know, we did this already, so I'm going to move on until we get to number Daled, which is where we were the last time. Ivorki Shorsham, so he said, what are we talking about? I just lost track of what he says. So something that we have to know about the spread of the dinim, and this has to do with these snakes, the concept of the snake. So again, the root of that, so what does a snake have to do with the chasadim and the gevuros of the Melech Hadas? That is the one that originally died. So it was put together in the secret of the first olam. Again, what olam is that? Shall tikun arisha dedicted to Eric Anpin. Clearly, it's not really easy for me to understand what he's talking about here. So he says, and from this, so he says all of this, the snakes and so on and so forth, are refined out. Besod Olam Arishon, which is a secret, and he uses his phrase Olam Arishon. The Olam Arishon shall tikkun the Rishon, of the first tikkun of the beard of Eric Anpin. The whole concept from this place spreads out. The bechinas of the kalim, bechinas hakelim v'acharayim. So we could. I'm not sure what he wants to say, that the kalim are the acharayim. The kol partzufim v'cholobos hatachtonim v'hem shorish hadinim b'sod nachash the betanim, which is the source of dinim, which is the concept of the nachash and the tanim. Now, there's not much on that one. I could go back to number bet and try to pick that up. We'll see. Let's read a little bit more and see what we need to do. So so now he puts the two words together, these kalim and the acharayim that we're talking about. Nimshach Yanika the klipas besod nachash. This leads to feeding the klipos, which is the secret of the word nachash. Let's look over here, number daled, and see if that will help. So he says, "I'm the Sifra the tznius of the klipa." Here we're not talking about the tanim or the nachash or the klipa. El the betana the kedusha shu bebechinis dinim. So he wants to talk about the dinim of kedusha. Asher genegdach mispasha the nachash the klipa. So corresponding to that, on the other side, or a mirror image of it, let's say, is the tanim the nachash the klipa. Like we said, the appearance of the chizia, I'm not sure what it means. The Zohar said, this is what the Zohar says, screw this up. 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry. So he said, Vizel Lashona, we're going to be right there. He said, V'ha'aretz ha'isa tohu. So it said the land was tohu. Amar Rebbe Hashem and Uvdach the Bereshis, Chambrech La'anchum Rebbe Yadin Bay. So what went on in Bereshis, that I guess the yeshivas learned this, and they know what it's all about. Avachav is the Irin, Inin the Yadin, L'Rmosh Uvdach the Bereshis, Barat to the Tam and the Gada. But there are very few people really understand the metaphor that we can understand from this of the snakes, Sheb'uvda the Bereshi, Baraza the Tanim, the Haggadah, which is the secret of the great snake, Adkan. So that's true. I really don't know. And let's see what he says. Oh, 1 second. Okay, so now going back. Now he needs to explain this. Ubir Re Tavul. What's the Re's first name? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, so we'll call him the Re Tavul. Okay, he's one of Midrash Taninim. So he has a long drush over there. Okay, anyway, we'll go on the Bezel Shona. There are very few that will understand the secret. So now, are we talking about two different things? When we talk about Olam Abriya and the Kedusha part of that, I'm not sure how that works. So the Tanim, the Klipa. About the emes, so all of them were talking about the Tanim of Kalipa. About the emes, Sharak an Nimshol hu Beklipa, so only what we're comparing it to is in the Klipa. Shachataninim Shabaklipa, so all of the other snakes that are in the Klipa, Mishnalshlim and Echazim, Bizroas, Shalzer, Hatanim, and Nizkar, so all of the rest of them have to do with this big snake. In other words, are connected to it. Shuhu Tiferes Bekedusha, which is the Tiferes Kedusha. And I have to read that again because I was thinking the opposite of that. He says, let's go back where it says, Aval ha'emes sharak ha'nimshol hu beklipa. So what is that? What do we mean to say? Kishar ha'taninin shebeklipa, all the rest of the klipos. Mishtal shalem ben echazim mizroas shalzeh hatanim anizgar shuhu ha'teferes v'kedusha. They're all holding on to the body of kedusha. Adkan b'ayin sham ma'ashabir l'fi darko. So that didn't clear that up real quickly. So we need to look further. So he said, let's look at it this. Let's explain like this. So this aspect of the snake, he says it spreads through all of the different olamos. Mispashtim, the rocha of the almond is small, and it goes to the right, it goes to the left. Which is really, he was talking right about the Melech Hadas, who holds within it Chasadim and Gavuros, and now the Kavaros of the Chasadim and Gavuros, they spread. V'yavor say the Hispashtusa, but Olamos Bri Yitzir Hasiya. So then that's what we're going to explain here. V'yavor, the order of how it spreads through the different worlds from Bria to Yitzira to Hasiya. Ki Kara Bebria, because the main part of this is Olam Bria, Shuhu Resha. I think he's talking about the snake still. Umispashet ba'acharayim the Yetzira, and it spreads onto the outside, or the back of Yetzira, Shuhu b'bechinas achrei kasvin dezer anpen, which is all this metaphor here. Let's just read it one more time. He says, Ki ikara b'bria shuhu reisha. So the head of the snake seems to be in the reisha. Mispashet ba'acharayim the Yetzira, and what happens to it? It spreads onto the back of Yetzira, Shuhu bechinas achrei kasvin dezer anpen, which is this talk about this is understood about the aspect of the back of the shoulders of Zer Anpen. Umeir bebechinas ach ba'ach el hazan v'chavshuha hasiyah, and it spreads through the concept of back to back into the olam of Yitzia. So that means that one back leads to the next back until you reach down to Yitzia. Now it's not really understandable to me how it is that he chose the words back. It's referred to the backside. So the power of this backside that spreads into Yetzira and Asiyah, who besod shem kale the tikkun harisha. Now here's really goes off into, to me, this is really into uncharted water. So he says, who sowed shem kale the tikkun harisha. This is the concept of the first tikkun, which is the word kale. Now we know that kale spreads. Let's say that spreads are now, and kale also is a concept of chesed. I just don't know where he's going because he's taking it into the outer worlds. So I'll take the rishon and zoam aladinim. So zoam, what means it? It foams aladinim, or it becomes angry with the dinim. Klipos lahachniim. So now we're talking about this, the action of the dinim of kedusha, which is spreading down there. V'hakadusha nater nishmar achizas hadinim v'haklipos. So the kedusha itself, it guards from the hold of the klipos and the dinim. Agonus bo shorish lahamshachas unikas hadinim unika ledinim. So he says these words here. Also, it's hidden in it. Its root. What's the root doing? Lahamshachas yanika the dinim, to bring some kind of feed to the dinim. But klipos besod elef yamim, the whole, which is the 1,000 days of the week. Shehu shorish elef shanos galos, which is the concept of the 1,000 years of galos. Now, all of that to me is pretty difficult to understand. So, a lot of metaphor there. It says Galufi the Galifim. Now, I don't think there was anything we missed here. So Galufi the Galifim, so the carving of the stamp, the impression of the impression, Hakikas called Hakikus. Okay, so now let's look over what he wants to say. But the Hiko says we're learning little by little here. He says, Ray Bir Yakar. It means carving out something or stamping something. Patuach is open. Patuach hoisen, an open stamp. Metargamina kagalov de azka, like the carving of a azka. I think it's a signet ring. Upirish hakikus hakikus. So what is it? Why do you have a double lashon here? Adkan. So now we're going to have to see the two perushim according to as it's going along. So let's try to understand what he's talking about. Galufi. He says Galufi the Galip and Hakipa shall call Hakikos. This is the ultimate stamp. What does it stamp? It stamps that name Yud Kei Vav Kei Ad Kan. So he says, So we don't have a lot out of that, except that we know this is an ultimate carving. What's carved into it is the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. I think the word stamp is probably better, but let's see what else he says. So he says, actually the words of the last part, the Gulufi, the Galipa, Chakipa Kola, Chakiko, who Bechinas Kli, Rishon, the Shorshe shall call a Kalim, and it's the root of all the other Kalim, of all Kalim. Number Vav. So he said, so the impression that I have here is that using the word impression, that impressed into Olam Abriya is a stamp of the name Yud Ke Vav Ke. And then he says that it shall call the Kalim, so it becomes it's a Kli. So he wants to say that this carving produces, or the stamping produces a Kli. Rebbe Zohar Chai, he says, Shabir kan vizel deshon the galuva the galifin kli shal the. So that's what's carved out here. It says the carving out of the kalim. Kamo begalfi mashka shabashas. That's apparently it's in a Gemara over there. He said so. He says shapirushu kli. So what is he talking about over there? Begalfi mash. Okay, he said that's the word kli adkan. Became beer bezoyer high. So what we're getting at is that we're talking about the creation of a vessel that could hold the light, I guess, of Betzilus. So became beir bezoyer high lochalon. He says that Bizel the Shana Vizera Vashir Hamaimer Golufi de Galifim Shorsh Has Chalasis Galasa Kli. This is the root of the revelation, of the revealing of the concept of Kli. Kola Kalim, and in that Kli has all the rest of the Kalim in it, Ad Khan. So still not clear. Ayin Sham Mashabir, the Fidarko, so there's a lot of Biurim on this we could get to. Let's look a little bit more up at the top. So he says, Ki Inyan Hakika. So when we talk here about this stamp of a Giluf, who Bechinas Kli, it's a kli that you stamp into that kli kadei the kababa or. So in order that the kli, in other words, it was whatever it was at this point, you're looking at it making itself into a vessel that holds that light. For kli mitzamsem as or besocho, and what it does is it takes the light and it contracts it within itself. Number Zion. Let me go to number Zion. Let me see how this light works here. So he said, Rei Bezoar Hakia, Shehebi Dibrik Ram Paparas. He said al Zohar, and he says this is on the Zohar. He says Bezel the Shono, Golif Pirush Chokok Hakika Hazoshu Mako Matzimsum, because this is the place where everything gets contracted down. So he said because of Nikwa Galifu. This is called it's stamped. It's being stamped. Ki pirish galifo masach alona klal b'yadeinach rav. That is that this concept here is coming from the Ari. Shafi shapirish kol kli kibel the kabel b'sochel kol or. So that was the phrase that we're using over here. Sheyashpia ein sof baruchu. So what he's describing here is what's happening in the concept of this impression, that the Ein Sof Baruch Hu is actually contracting himself into an impression, Ad Kan. He says the same word, Sofa Galifa Ma'elu, Hu Kamo Misha Choiper Naros, like a person who digs, I guess, ditches for rivers or flows of water, they'll hold it in order to bring, like a canal. Let's say he used the word naros. So then what happens is the water has to be channeled. It starts being channeled, and it only goes in one place. So he's giving a metaphor here that Atzilus is enormous. Right, because it has no, has no space, or no space could bind it. Let's say something like that. And now, with this chikika, it channels it so that it's now minimized. The fee machalak anarach b'shem motzoin the v'nechem that are I guess coming out before them. Kach harishim b'chabisman the tzimtzum. So now he's using the word ashimo now. He says also this stamping, we'll call it a stamp also, or this impression, at the time of this tzimtzum. It's all put together in different kinds of ways. I'm not sure what that meant. Because why? What makes it different? The kav that spreads into them, Lefi hahachana asher behu motzasham. So he says that, so that makes more sense. He says it all goes according to the Rishima that they had there. And what's that? That's the canal that was dug. So as the water comes into it, we're talking about the light of Olam Atzilus. It has to be channeled. So he says shahakava mispashet bechem. So the line, he says, that spreads into them. He uses the word kav. It all gets divided up according to the way that it's put together. It's put together. Which is found there. Which are these stamps that we're talking about, or these carving out that we're talking the Shabbat begins klalos al simson, which is the concept of Simpson, of what Simpson means. They crime galifo beklal. So the concept, he says, the concept is always the concept of stamping or carving out at kan. So let's look a little bit more. So now we're on number Zion up at the top. And number Zion up at the top, he says, Vihine Shorsha Kelev Hagilufim Haim Elu Hamalachim. Now this is an interesting part. He says the root of the Kalim themselves. Now he means to say they are actually the remnant of the broken Malachim. Shachar Kelev Hagilufim Haim Elu Hamalach Shemezu. So they're died now. V'nivru ba'olam hatikun. Then they go through the process of the birur, and they're in olam hatikun now. V'nisak v'bechina kitzonis v'kelim, and they're put back together again in the concept of kitzonis and kelim. I was doing pretty good before, and this sounds like very difficult for me to understand. He said, because if you're dealing with the malachim shemesu and they went through a tikkun, but he wants to say that this becomes the root of whatever his words are. Let me see. Shemesa v'nivraro ba'olam hatikun. They were found out in the olam hatikun v'nisakta b'bechina kitzonius v'kelim. And now, when they come back together again, he's talking about the birurim, and then they become back in the concept of kitzonius and kelim. So we're now on number ches, and let me see if I can get this up there. There we go. So number ches says Rei ba'ad b'maro. He said that the original kings who died, Haim Sod Hagilufim. So he's trying to help me out. What happened?